Welcome to the Go Out Living Attitude, a cancer survivor's journey through health and wellness, helping others search for the tools to bring us a healthier and happier lifestyle. Hi, everybody. Jonathan Brandt, Go Out Living. Today's special guest is Darcy Frankel. She is the founder of the Serious Cleanse Method, creator of the 5-Day Serious Cleanse Protocol, and 30-Day Serious Cleanse Challenge. She is also the owner of Hanalei Day Spa on Kauai, North Shore. Darcy is also a Ayurvedic practitioner and wellness educator with more than 32 years of clinical experience specializing in cleansing and rejuvenation. Welcome to the show, Darcy.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
The pleasure is all mine. I am excited to have you here. Like we were talking earlier, the experience you come with is amazing. And I love what we had talked about, starting with, some devastating news for you. A disaster happened, and it's changed the way you've been thinking about things. So I thought we'd start with that.
Yeah. So in 2018, we broke a record here on Kauai. There was 50 inches of rain in a 24-hour period, and the North Shore of Kauai, there's one road that wraps around the island, and the road actually broke. Literally broke. And so, I had been operating my day spa here for 23 years now. And so it was a shock. I mean, obviously, with all the rain, there was also some trauma. The whole neighborhood, we were really kind of traumatized. And then we couldn't leave. We couldn't come in. I actually had to come in on a boat. And so my business was interrupted. And I'm very passionate about helping people here at Hanalei Day Spa with, relaxing spa services and cleansing and rejuvenation retreats. And so all of a sudden I was stopped in my tracks and had to be really even more present. So I just started serving the community. We had Acupuncture Without Borders. We had different AA meetings and Al-Anon meetings and other things just to help the community's immediate needs. And there was also so much help. But what I continually reflected on was how, just living on Kauai has us be in tune with nature because it's very raw and wild here, an island, and the wind and the rain, the elements kind of beat down on us and we have no control over the weather. So to me, although in the very beginning, I was very affected, I was in shock and had to put my skills of processing trauma to the test for myself and my community. But then I started to see how, just like illness or a diagnosis can be a gift, this was a gift. And I did what my Vedic astrologer had been telling me for decades, make an online course. And I had almost a year and a half to codify this program, which is called the Serious Cleanse 30-Day Challenge. And for somebody who's interested in cleansing, you can go check that out. But the point here is that all too often we see the natural disaster or the disease or the diagnosis as an interruption in our life. And I really believe that if we choose to flip the script rather than being a victim, we can see this as the gift, as the opportunity, as the path, not the obstruction in our path. So that's what I did. And in Hawaii, I'm not a big surfer, but I have surfed before. But we learned to get on the board, paddle in the direction the wave is going, and stand up and then have fun. And I think that when we get a diagnosis, it can be very heavy. When there's a natural disaster, it can be very heavy. But it's also a wake-up call. And our organism, the animal of our body, as I say, is tremendously smart. It sequesters things away in a very intelligent way so that the rest of our body can continue functioning. And so in this way, it turns us back onto ourselves to think more about our bodies, the terrain, what's really happening. How can I work with my body instead of, fighting a disease? And so it's a complete mind
I
shift.
love it. I mean, I went through it and I get it. Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's the hard part though, is getting people to understand that like you said, it's a gift or it it's an opportunity to better yourself. I talk about doing the podcast. I never thought in a million years I'd be doing something like this or health coaching or anything like that, even though I've been in the medical world. But from my diagnosis to my wife's passing has changed the direction of my life in such a positive way. It's been amazing. So how do we help people understand it can be a gift?
Well, I can't tell anybody what they should do. Every person's situation is unique, and that's what Ayurveda teaches us, that we're a unique combination of the different elements. Ayurveda, just to go back to the beginning, is a system of healing from India. And so every person is unique. Every person's situation is unique. What I can share is what I've, personally observed over 32 years of practice. And I think that we wake up when we're ready. We can't get, you can't, the old adage, you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink. I just think that we all come to our wake up when we are ready and as we're ready, and we can show people, when people come to me for, a telehealth consultation, I just help them look at the different options with curiosity rather than a kind of tension or fear based. So that means, usually in the beginning, we work off some of the trauma pieces. And there's lots of techniques to process our trauma. And then I really think about creating the best possible terrain for the body. We can't control every diagnosis or every outcome, but we can really befriend our bodies and ask questions like, how can I support my organism today? What does this body really need?
I
We can
love that.
Yeah, we can influence the environment in which our cells, our tissues, our hormones, our immune system, our nervous system is functioning. But really, to me, the deep healing is asking, how can I support my organism today? So it's a it's a like again a different way of looking at it. Curiosity over fixing, support over fixing, partnership with the body instead of fighting, progress over perfection.
A lot of times it's kind of that intuition too. It's listening to your body. That's what I found with myself. I had to sit back and really understand what I was trying to get out of everything instead of, like you said, trying to just fix it. And that was kind of the medical side of it. Okay, we're just going to go in and fix this. Well, it doesn't necessarily work that way. Yeah, you might get rid of one thing, but a lot of times it causes more issues. So if you don't listen to yourself, you can get into some trouble there. I know that from experience.
It's true. It's true. In fact, we have a term for that in Ayurveda, pragya parad, or it's translated as intellectual blasphemy, going against what we know to be true for ourselves. So it's or a mistake of the intellect. So if when we make mistakes, sometimes we don't know. For instance, I don't know if you or the viewer has seen the movie Aaron Brockovich. These people who lived in this area were being poisoned and they didn't know it, but it showed up in different ways for different people. And so they probably, had symptoms and they didn't know it. So it was a mistake. It was an accident. They didn't realize it. And so once we know, we can make better choices by using our intuition, by, I don't want to be too technical here, but there are ways to turn things around. And a lot of times I realize when I feel like my work with people, it's sometimes being a bit of a detective. I get my little microscope or little loop out, and we really do a deep dive into people's lifestyle and look, what is your quality of water? What's the quality of the thoughts that I'm thinking? What are the quality of the foods that I'm taking in? What's the quality of the impressions I'm consuming? And so when we really step back and look big picture about what we are taking in, a lot of times the causative factors are actually in our lifestyle. And then once we come to recognize what they are, we can eliminate them and work with our organs of detoxification, the four pathways of detoxification, and really make some positive changes. But the Western medical model doesn't think about this. The Western medical model is, perpetuated. Excuse me. The Western medical model is perpetuated on quick diagnoses, expensive tests, and bringing people through a certain streamlined process. However, all the indigenous healing models look at the terrain, look at the body mind connection. How am I feeling? How do I talk to myself? And once we have a big wake up call like this, it is all on the table for most people. They start to roll up their sleeves and really look at everything and just try everything. And that's where it's good to have a guide or someone who's helped people before, so that we don't just try everything out of desperation, which we do. And there's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes even those things can cause other complex, um, a domino effect of things to happen in the body.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's very much the holistic healing side is what you're looking at. Because a lot of times, and again, this is what I went through, I wasn't looking at what was going to happen downstream. I was, this is the treatment you're getting, and you just deal with it, and you don't you don't really worry about what it's actually going to do to you, even though it's very toxic. Chemo is very toxic to a person, and it's going to affect other parts of your body. And that's exactly what has happened to me, happened to my wife. And it took us a long time to see the holistic side, that we had to look at more than just, okay, we're trying to get rid of the cancer, but there's a lot more to it than just that.
It's true. It's true. By Well, first of all, we have cancer cells. All of us have cancer cells in our body at all times, and the body is working hard. But when it gets overwhelmed, and by the time we get a diagnosis, it gets more complicated. That's why I always teach people and encourage people to think about our future self with the things that we consume. Think about our future self with our lifestyle habits, with our thoughts. with the with all of our actions. And sometimes, it's the right thing to cut it out or do the radiation or but who am I to tell somebody unless they ask me my opinion? My mother had I'll share this personal story. My mother battled with cancer, and she was in the medical field, and she knew her trajectory. And my brother was always in the tech field, fixing computers and things like that. Now he grows plants and sends them all over the United States. But he was like, "Mom, drink this green smoothie, do the da da da, do the da da da." And my mother didn't want to do any of those things. You can imagine for me, I had to really like take a step back and just say, "Oh, this is her choice." And I had to support my mother in what she wanted, even though it was hard for me, even though, maybe I thought I knew better, although I didn't. I knew she knew what she wanted. And so she went down that route and I supported her. It was like I've helped women during birth, like an Ayurvedic doula. And what excuse me. My dear friend Annie, she was like, I want, everything natural, no C-section, no, just no nothing. And after 36 hours, she was
Oh,
like,
no.
"Give me the drugs."
Um,
And my job
Oh,
was to support her. That's my only job. So it's like, okay. And I was like 22 at the time. I was like, okay. Yeah, I learned that lesson early on. We need to meet people where they are, not where we think that as a healing practitioner and an advocate, I believe we need to meet people where they are and not put their agenda onto them. And that's, I think, has been that attitude, that lesson that I learned early on has served me well in helping people.
yeah, 100%. I mean, it's listening. Is and it's actually hearing what a person needs. Because a lot of times we just kinda like you said, you jump in thinking you're helping somebody, but you're not actually listening to what they need.
Yeah. So there's two levels here. There's what is my organism really needing, and what is my mind and my emotional body needing. And sometimes it's safety and certainty. And a diagnosis, you step into the deep unknown. We as practitioners have to listen deeply. And one of the things, and hold on to that question, pin that for yourself, so we can come back to it. One of the things that we learn in Ayurveda medical school is, one of the cornerstone programs is called Pancha Karma. Pancha means five, karma means actions, good, bad, instant karma, right? And so this is a quintessential cleansing and rejuvenation program originally created for royalty. And it goes through all the tissues of the body and helps to cleanse them, basically. And so as students, we do this on ourselves. We receive this. I receive panchakarma at least a dozen times in my life so I could see clearly when I'm working with somebody. I could feel into them clearly because, I mean, I'm not perfect by any means, but um, we clean our senses so that we can be really present for our patients. So I think that's also really important for the practitioner, that they don't, project their fears or onto somebody else or their own maladies, and that they come to a space being clean and as clear as they can be in any given moment.
Yeah, it's which sometimes it's hard when you've been through something, but you it's really Having a story is one thing, but letting them know it's still their story is the important.
Yes, and empowering people to elevate their story to healing is possible no matter what. No matter what. I mean, we've seen things disappear completely and shift on a dime. And that's possible. It's possible. It's
Well,
very, very, very possible.
and that's what I've said throughout this. I mean, one of the most beneficial things to the podcast, it's been healing for me. It's been everybody's such an inspiration in so many ways, but me getting my story, my wife's story out and continuing to learn has just been the healing part is amazing. And it allows you to continue to dream and continue to want to do better because you're not done. And I think that's what people hopefully take away from discussions like this is, we've been through it and we keep going no matter what. It's not over until it's over. But as long as you can sit there and go, I gave it everything I got, that's all that matters.
It's true. And Jonathan, you are a great example of flipping the script. You took what was probably the hardest challenge of your life and you turned it into service to others, service to your wife, and helping and learning. So you really flipped the script.
More than I ever thought I would, but no, I appreciate that. And like I said, I'm enjoying it though. I get to meet amazing people and hopefully we're helping a lot of amazing people because it's sometimes it's scary to get the to actually get the words out there and tell people what you're going through, but I tell you what, it's worth it.
It is. It's very vulnerable. It's very vulnerable. And but also that's our humanity. Being vulnerable. We're all humans. And sometimes it's hard. I've had my own health challenges and that's part of what's made me able to I've been able to learn so much through my own processes and communicate that process and be able to be, vulnerable through that, feeling that, even embarrassment and shame because we think we're supposed to be these perfect, healthy beings. And I don't know anybody who hasn't had at least one challenge in their life. So it really brings us back to back down to the ground and being human because that's the stuff. It's juicy and messy. Life is messy.
Yeah, and I find it helps with empathy. And because of what we've been through, we can show that empathy towards others a lot easier than before. I know I couldn't. I mean, even working with sick people, it was different. Now I get it.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that earlier. It helps me to, part of what I've been through helps me to have great empathy for people. And sometimes that's all that we need in a moment is empathy when we're going through a hard time. That way we can move to a deeper place of acceptance. Shame accepted is our greatest treasure. And so sometimes people feel ashamed or embarrassed that they have this diagnosis. Yet, when we deeply, deeply accept on all levels, this is what's happening right now. Might not be what's going to happen tomorrow or in a year or in a month. Things can turn around. But really working through those pieces of, the trauma of the diagnosis. What am I going to have be my story about that, my interpretation? What do I be a victim? Am I at the effect or am I going to just roll my sleeves up and be proactive and also be a share what I've learned. Because sometimes people go through these processes and, they'll get a diagnosis and it can feel isolating to go through all the doctors and all, everything and challenging and draining. But the people that I've noticed who have had the best experiences and the best outcomes, they turn it around and use it to serve in some way like you're doing.
I can also add to that that attitude of how you go into treatment, how you are around others affects so much of your future. And what I mean by that is I remember me and Christy were chemo buddies. So we'd sit right next to each other, but we were always making jokes. We were always upbeat. We were always positive, even when it was tough. I mean, I remember I was getting a different chemo for the first time. And Christy looked at me and goes, "You don't look good." Well, I was having a reaction to it to the extent that I was having trouble breathing and it was going pretty quick. And she goes, "You're blue." And, nurse comes running over and they do what they need to do, give me whatever. And, but in the end, we're still laughing about it because it is what it is. And if we couldn't just take those moments as a light moment, God, it would be devastating. So I'm sure people from Colorado up to Nebraska to South Dakota will always remember me and Christy because we went into it so different. And this wasn't taking us down. It was just another day and whatever we'll get through. But we're always smiling. We're always laughing. We just did it our way. And I think that helped us tremendously.
Sounds like it did.
I'm sure we looked like crazy people at some points, but yeah, it was amazing. Darcy,
Whatever it takes to get you through.
yeah, that's it. And that's what I wanted to ask you. What is your, because you deal with so many different people with so many different afflictions. What do you tell somebody once, okay, they acknowledge they want help, they need the help. Then where do they go? What can you give them for advice?
Do you have a year or 2?
Right.
It depends on their situation. It depends on, their it depends on well, I fall back on my Ayurveda wisdom here. So, how strong are they in their body? What is their age? What level of proactivity do they want to take in their health and well-being process? And like I say, I just meet each individual where they are, Jonathan. I don't have like a cookie cutter thing. I mean, I do have some programs that address our 4 organs of detoxification and my 5-day serious cleanse protocol, and I have my 30-day serious cleanse challenge. And those help people to eliminate the 7 different categories of toxins or learn about the 7 categories of toxins and gently start to cleanse them from our bodies, which depending on our toxic burden could, take some dedication and time. But if, someone's faced with a diagnosis, we want to eliminate the causes in our bodies. And I find all too often that it's the toxic burden. And I also have a great quiz. It takes 3 to 5 minutes. People can assess their own toxic burden. And that's a great starting place. And so that anybody could do that. And we could put the link in the show notes for people to start there. But really, it's so personalized because each person is a unique combination of the different elements according to Ayurvedic medicine and traditional Chinese medicine. So I want to answer your question, but it's hard without, a particular human in front of me.
I think you did answer it because here's That's what I wanna hear because when we talk about Western medicine, it's very stringent. It's very, "This is what you come in with, this is what we're giving you, and there you go out the door." That's what's amazing about health and wellness. That's what's amazing about holistics and functional health medicine. We're looking at the actual person, and then we'll figure out what you need once we talk to you, once we go through the process of getting to know you, really. So, yeah, you answered it perfectly. That's what people need, is that sort of understanding that we're not all the same, that it's gonna be a different outlook for everybody because we react differently to everything.
It's true. It's true. And when I see somebody either on a, telehealth call or in person, I can then start to drop into what their needs are based on what they're saying and based on what their organism is telling me. Kind of little, body whisper action here. And then I don't like to overload people unless they're like, I want to do everything. Even then, I'm still like, well, let's do this first step. And then let's try this next step. Or here are the three top things, for you to work on these next 2 weeks. Let's meet in a couple of weeks. Let's see where you are, how you're feeling, what you've implemented, how that affected you, because we'll either get the desired effect, the opposite effect, or nothing. And that gives us information, and of course, this is not medical advice. I'm not curing, diagnosing, or prescribing anything. This is just education information for people to, they should consult with their doctors at all times before making any kinds of change to their diet or lifestyle.
Oh, love it. Darcy Frankel. I mean, absolute pleasure. It really is. Founder of the Serious Cleanse Method, creator of the 5 Day Serious Cleanse Protocol and 30 Day Serious Cleanse Challenge, owner of Hanalei Day Spa. Absolute pleasure. It really was.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate you for your time and the energy that you've put into your podcast and your own and your wife's healing process. You're really a role model for people, and you've done great work.
I really appreciate that. And, it's not possible without folks like you. I mean, you guys are everything that makes the show what it is. So I really do appreciate you being here. And we'll make sure everything gets in the blog post for Darcy. And yeah, a great episode. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having.
All right, everybody. Thank you all for listening. And as we continue our health and wellness journeys, find the attitude, keep the attitude, go out living. Bye, everybody.
Aloha.